Well, yeah. Well, haven't you ever had a guy you're interviewing and as soon as you start, you go like that? Well, let me tell you this.
To pitch you something.
Actually, that's not a bad idea.
Now that this fake interview thing is
Ah, that's good.
That's a good
good one.
You were born and raised in Utah. What was life like for you growing up?
I had a great childhood. My dad was a dentist, and he kind of wanted us to have a farm experience. So we bought and built a place. There wasn't 10 houses within a mile and a half of us. And it was just out with my BB gun, running around, killing everything I could get in my sights. It was and I come from a large family. There were 10 of us, always somebody to play with. And it was just really an idyllic childhood. I have good parents, good brothers and sisters, and so I've got no gripes about any of that at all.
At what age did your love of film manifest?
Well, my dad had a cousin who was a World War II combat cameraman, 35 millimeter film. Everybody else is out there, and he's out there, hey, could you move a little to the, you know, it's hard to imagine what that would be like, be with a camera out there. But he influenced me, not so much by talking to him, but just knowing that he did that. And through him, my dad in the 50s bought an 8mm home movie camera, which was pretty unusual. That wasn't that common to have home movies in the 50s. And it just always fascinated me when my dad would get, okay, we're going to get out here, we're little rat kids, we're going to take your picture. And I didn't really care so much about being in front of it or whatever. I was fascinated with what my dad was doing with that camera. So by the time I was in the 8th grade, I started sneaking the camera out and using his film and, you know, just doing little shots and things like that, and then actually made kind of movies by the time I was in the 9th grade. And I think that's a really important point to make to any young person who's trying to get out and into this business is if you can decide early on what you want to be, and you know, then you can go for it. You can spend all these years going after it instead of, boy, I don't know what I want to do. That'd be nice. And I have people come up to me all the time that say, how can I get into movies? I want to get into movies behind the camera. Well, how old are you? 38, 5 kids. It's a hard business. It's a freelance business. The earlier you can start, the better.
What was your first job in film?
First thing I really got paid for and was a professional job was, I was in high school, and out in our area we had a drive-in called the Davis Drive-In. And I would go to that drive-in, and in between shows, it was always double features, they would have, you know, the dancing hot dog and come to the snack bar, 5 minutes left for showtime, before showtime. And then they would show little commercials of local businesses, the bank and the florist and so forth. Well, I looked at that and I thought, that's 35mm film, which I don't know anything about, but I can do it. And I went and found the owner of that drive-in and I said, what do you pay for that piece that goes up on the drive-in in between? And he said, that costs us, it's done in the Bay Area, San Francisco area, and it costs us $1,000. I said, I'll do it for $1,000 and I'll do it on film, because what they were doing was slides. And you just see a slide of the bank or whatever. And he goes, really, you think you can do that? And I said, yeah, let's do a test. Because the only way I could do it is I had to shoot 16mm film and do a blow-up. And I'd never done that. I'd never been around it. I'd read articles in ASC magazine, but I'd never seen it. So he allowed me and paid for about a $110 test. And it had a couple of things that we ended up tweaking, but really it was fine. It was good. He was happy with it. And so then I launched, you know, and I went off and made this 10-minute piece for in between the shows at the drive-in. And the reality was I didn't make a dime. I made it for less than the $1,000, but I spent every dime that I got on editing equipment and a tripod and just the things that you really needed. And I didn't care about that, about the making the money. And now I had a resume piece.
Where did you get your education?
Well, I went to the U and to BYU, and it was great because they were very different experiences. And so it was kind of like they melded together. It was really good for me, I think, to do that and see how different ways, the teaching and the equipment and so forth. Really, the best thing I'd say school did for me was I had access to equipment. Because this is now, get your phone, go make your movie, whatever, you got to do it on your laptop. It wasn't like that. It was very expensive and technical. And to get a sync sound camera and a Niagara and all, some lights and all that, it was a big deal. But now I had access to it. That took a year or two because even, it was so expensive that neither department, the U or BYU, would just let you go out with their equipment, that you had to be kind of a, well-trusted or upperclassman or something like that. But that allowed me to make really my first film that was, it was sync sound, and it was kind of professional, and anyway, it took me to the next step.
You're a cinematographer, writer, director, and producer. Why do you choose to do these different jobs instead of focusing on just one?
One of the things I really still love about film is not being pigeonholed and doing one thing all the time. So some days I get up and I'm a writer, and I'll sit there and do research and write a script, and then other days where I might be filming for someone else as a director of photography, and then another day it's my film and I'm the director, and it's just fun that it's always changing. Bless you if you're those people that sit at the same desk every day and just handle whatever menial task that they put in front of you. But for me, it's just an adventure all the time, and you find yourself in amazing locations and traveling, and all of that really comes together and I think creates a fulfilled life.
What is your favorite part of the film process?
I have two favorite parts. The first one is when I decide that a project is worth doing and really get into the research to write it. That's fun. And you're getting all of this information and thinking, would that make a good scene? Should I do this? I tend to make films based on true stories. So when I read something that happened to whoever it is I'm researching that kind of is movie-esque, then I really get jazzed about it, and it's fun, and I keep then thinking how to arrange it in an order and how to make it be a movie and not just an episodic bunch of scenes. And then really the second way that I enjoy it the most is if the film's good, and they're not always good, but if it is, seeing an audience respond to it. And let me tell you a story about that. It's the first feature film that I did under the auspices of the way I'm doing it now was called 17 Miracles. Well, we made this film. Was very nervous about the money. I didn't know if people would go to it or support us or what. You just have an idea and you think it might be good, and you'd go through all 2 years of work and put it out there. And the day that it opened, I went theater hopping. And the first place I went to just see that the sound and projection were good and see if anybody's in the theater was in my hometown of Layton. And the way theaters are now, where you usually walk through kind of this cavernous area, and then you turn the corner and there you are, and the whole audience is there looking at the screen. Well, the movie was running, and I walked up that aisle and turned around and looked, and it was like a 1 o'clock afternoon screening, not on a Saturday, it was either a Thursday or Friday, and it was about 80% full. And I about started crying because it was like, they're gonna come. They're gonna come. And I felt strong enough about the material that I knew if they'd come, they'd like it. It's hard to get people to come and go to movies, especially these days, but anyway, I saw that it was well attended right off, and so I sat down, and by the time the movie gets into the theater, I've seen it. I've seen it a lot of times, and I don't watch the movie. What do I care? I've seen it so many times. I find a seat, and then I turn like this, and look at the audience for cues, what they're with, and or if they start talking in a plot part, or just the things you can learn from that. And we have a part in the film where there's a young man who is quite physically handicapped, but he's a really good heart, a really good guy, and because of the rigors of the journey, he dies. Well, that's kind of a sad deal, but at the very end of the film, we bring him back as like a guardian angel of the handcart people, that he's there watching over him, and you see him now with a complete body. He's no longer handicapped and so forth. And when that shot came up on the screen, and I'm sitting looking like this at a few ladies that were sitting behind me, the character's name was Albert. And this lady immediately started to cry and say to her friend, "That's Albert, that's Albert, he's whole." And then she burst into tears. It wasn't like, like that. It was the ugly, kind of cry. Anyway, that's a really fun experience to have.
What do you do to decompress after a project?
I don't compress. It's not like I have to get away from it or anything like that. It's fun. I enjoy it. But the things I do are pickleball. I have my own pickleball court. With this move, where we moved to next to my son, I said, okay, but I'm going to put in my own court. And it's great. It's fun. Yesterday I had 3 friends over, and we played in the morning, and then 3 more came at night, and we played at night. You'd think I'd be skinnier, but I haven't figured that out. Couldn't have anything to do with the ho-hos and the ding-dongs, I don't think. But anyway, so I do like to do that, and I'm also a tennis player. And my wife says that's about it. I don't really do much else.
You have around 150 film credits. What are some projects you look back on and say, I'm glad I did that one?
Well, the I'm glad I did that one thing, I'll tell you, is primarily it's my last one, The Fighting Preacher. Partly because, somebody asks you that question. Look back over this 100 years that you've been making film. What's your favorite? If you say, well, back in 1979, well, that means your career went. So I got to say my last one. And the truth is, it was stellar from start to finish. We really had good crew and a terrific cast. And, it's like this quote. Sorry, I can't remember who to credit with this, but they said, to make a good film, you need to have not quite enough money and not quite enough time. We've all seen examples where big studio films had all the money and all the time, and they deliver eggs. That's happened a lot. So that's how it was for me. On this Fighting Preacher film, we're struggling with the time and trying to do all that I want to do in a day. But there was never any really bad moments, anything like that. No blow-ups on the set or anything like that. And the post went really well. And then our preview screenings were good. I'm a big believer in them. We make a lot of changes based on what audiences say that are not my relatives or whatever. I say that, but actually one way I always do is I show it to all my siblings and their wives and husbands, and they're brutal. They don't pull no punches. Really? Oh yeah, that's stupid. What did you do that? That's, and you know what? I love it because it improves the film. So I go, yeah, I can see what you're saying. That really could have been better. Maybe I can fix it in editing.
How much attention do you pay to critics and reviews of your projects?
I read the articles, but if you just hang your whole hopes and dreams, on that kind of stuff, you're going to have a hard, long, tough life. You have to have a confidence to know that you did it good. You did your best, whatever. We had so little money. When people go into the movie theaters now, they walk down that hall to get to their theater, and this movie over here cost $200 million, and this one cost $100 million, and we're making these little independent films for so much cheaper that if I can even just get a niche audience that wants to come and support us, I feel good about it.
Can you talk a little bit about your newest film, The Fighting Preacher?
1915, a couple that were living in Richfield, Utah, were called to go back to upstate New York because the Mormon Church had purchased the home that kind of started this all, with Joseph Smith. And there hadn't been any church members back there for 65 years. Well, this couple go back there, and it's brutal. And they get back there, and their people did not want them there. It was a time of a lot of prejudice, and they didn't want them coming and hanging around their cute little town. Well, the only way they survived, I think, is that this man that went back, Willard Bean, was a former middleweight champion of the world in boxing, and he wouldn't take their guff. They'd come up and say, start swearing at him or yelling at him or something. He'd smack him in the face. Stuff that now you'd be in jail in 2 minutes, But it was a different time back then. And then over the course of their mission, which ended up being almost 25 years, they really turned the hearts of that town, and the town learned to love them, and they learned to love those people that started out so bad. So I think it's a very apropos story to all the divisionalism that we have in our society, and that the answers are usually, showing love and kindness.
How often do you get pitched ideas?
I get pitched ideas, I'll bet, an average of 3 times a week. And it's inundating. Because on one hand, it just gets, oh, God, I don't know how to keep up with this. But on the other hand, that's how I found some of the best stories that I've done. I loved the whole experience of doing the Cokeville Miracle. My cousin came up to me, Stanley. Stanley came up to me after a screening we'd had for another film and said, I've got a movie for you. Well, I think, cousins don't know a good movie. Cousins come to your house on Christmas Day and break your toys. That's all he ever did. But man, it was good. It was a good idea. So I really try to at least give them all a little space so I can see if there's something there. But man, you can see why very quickly producers get readers, because somebody needs to sift through all this stuff that's just not anything anybody would want to do.
When getting pitched an idea, what do you look for?
I think that movies still are the best movies if they carry emotion. It can be funny, it can be sad, it can be tragic, but something that moves you, and not just you come out, no, that was that guy got with that girl and whatever, but something you feel. And I think the deeper you feel, the more longevity that response has in a viewer. So I really look for things that in some way move me.
A few years ago, you worked on The Stray at the studios. What are your thoughts on working at the Utah Film Studios?
I wish I could work here more. I haven't had any other, opportunities really. Nothing's come up that was like, oh, we should go up there and work in their stages or whatever, because it was really terrific. It was so well laid out and professional, very well dampened sound stages, and easy access to equipment, and it's great being right off the freeway like this. I think there are a lot of places that you'd look at on a map and say, oh, that's way closer, but really in terms of getting here, this is really a terrific place to work.
What's next for you?
I haven't decided what I'm going to do. To me, the most important part of this business as a writer, director, producer is the project you choose. How many times have you been to a movie and you come out, or read a book and you finish it and you go, who thought that was going to be good? I wasn't interested in that story right from the start, and I never was. So I take a lot of time with that to really try to find something that I think I'm kind of an everyman. And if it interests me, then I think it will other people too.